Hello. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use regression to figure out an equation that actually kind of predicts your data. All right, so the regression feature on your calculator takes the data that you have entered into the calculator and uses it to essentially build an equation that fits and I'm pulling up that fits our data that we see here from our scatter plot. All right, now this video assumes that you have already put in the data that you got from your table initially in the problem and that you have already created your scatter plot. So if you haven't done that already, you're going to want to go back to the first part of this question and watch the video attached to that one. All right, so here's how we get an equation that matches our data from the calculator. All right, so over here we're going to hit the stat button, and as I said before, the video assumes that you have already entered the data from your table into L1 and L2. So we're going to hit that stat button one more time. We're going to go back to this screen right here, and we're going to go over to the part that says Calc. Okay. You just hit the right key and it'll take you over to the Calc menu, and then we're going to go down until we see an option that says EXP Reg. Okay, so as I said in the previous video, when we looked at the data, it looked like an exponential curve, right? That's the shape that we were seeing. So if we had saw a straight line, we'd be looking at this linear regression feature here in number 8. We'd be trying to approximate a linear equation, but since this one was making an exponential curve, we're going to be trying to approximate an exponential equation using regression on our calculator. So we're going to select option 0. And then when we do, it's going to ask you where are your X's and where are your Y's, essentially where are your inputs and your outputs. And we put our stuff into L1 and L2. So all we have to do is just hit enter a few times. Don't worry about this one. Don't worry about this one. Just go right to calculate and hit enter. And you're going to see some things pop up on your screen here. So you're going to notice it's giving you the format of your equation here. So this is a pretty typical format for an exponential equation where we have a times b raised to the x power. You've probably seen this before in Algebra 1. We also saw it a little bit last semester. So this is a pretty typical format here. And then you'll also notice that they give us the values for a and b. Okay, so they tell us about this coefficient, and then they also tell us about the base of the exponent. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and write out my equation here. So remember, the format that we are working with, let me select my pen here. The format that we are working with is y equals a times b to the x, and then they tell us that a is 4,516, and you'll notice they want us to round these numbers to 4 decimal places, so I'm going to count over 4 decimal places. So we got 4456. And we want to round, so I'm going to look at the 5th decimal place, and since that's less than 5, I'm going to keep this at 6, and then I'm going to multiply, and then I'm going to put the b value. So we got 1.2060, and that's going to be raised to the x power. Okay, so this is the format of the equation that the regression feature on the calculator is going to give us. Now you'll notice over here when we go to enter our answer into MyOpenMath that we have an f of t, and that's equivalent to the y. Okay, so remember, if we usually have f of x, not f of t, but it's the same thing as the y value. It represents the output. Okay, so we're going to use f of t, and then inside of the equation they use an x, but our variable is t. All right, so when we write this out, we're going to say 4516.4456 times 1.2060 raised to the t. All right, if you're getting this question wrong, if you're putting in the numbers exactly right from your calculator and you're getting this question wrong, it's most likely because you're using x instead of t. The calculator doesn't really know what variable you're trying to use, so it just defaults to x. All right, but we know for our problem we're using t as the variable to represent the number of days into the pandemic. All right, and f of t is representing the number of cases on that given day. All right, so this is our equation. We can use this equation to make predictions and answer questions about the pandemic, and that's what I'm going to show you in the next video. All right, so the last thing that I want to show you before we close out this video is I want to show you what our new equation looks like on the graph. All right, so I'm going to go to y equals, and I'm going to input this equation that we got from the regression feature on our calculator. So I'm going to be entering in 4516.4456 multiplied by 1.2060 raised to the x. And like so for the calculator, we're going to use x, right? But when we enter our answer into my open math, remember that you're using the variable t. Now remember, this video assumes that you already had your scatter plot graphed, okay? So when we graph this equation that the calculator got us should match up really closely with the data points that we put in for our scatter plot. So let's watch what happens here when I hit graph. So here's our scatter plot, and you see our graph, and let me put that on the big screen here. There we go. And you can kind of see the solid line is our function that was given to us by the calculator for the regression feature, and you can kind of see the small dots there. Let me turn this off real quick, and you can watch it go through the points one more time, right? So here's our scatter plot. These are the points from our scatter plot. And then when I turn this thing on and graph it, you should be able to see that line go right through those points. And this is how you know that you have a good regression equation, because it should match up pretty closely with your data points. Your data points should all be very close to this curve. All right, guys, that's it for this video. Next video, I'll show you how to use the equation to answer questions.